Good morning. So welcome to Low Code Zone. We've got Belinda and Stephen with us today. Hey guys.
Hey David.
So Belinda, after your interview caused quite movement in the Holochain organization, lots of excitement. And one of the things that really caught on was your description of low code environments and how low code can bring non-programmers and people who are really close to both the problem and the solutions that could work on the ground much closer to be able to design, develop, deploy the tooling that would need to support those solutions as a way of increasing diversity and decreasing that single or monolithic mindset coming into solution building. So that caused quite a bit of excitement. So I thought we'd start today and just open up the space a little bit and hear a little bit more about your experiences and beliefs about the low code environments and how they can work effectively.
Sure. I guess my experience to date is largely around what I can really talk about is web development, right? Having been around in 94, 95, when the web was just fresh. And at that point, I find it funny now that I was intimidated by HTML1. So intimidated by HTML1 that I wasn't prepared to hand code it to make a website, right? So today I will happily get into, I prefer to use a website builder. I don't build stuff by hand, but I will happily get into a website builder and look at code and, do some custom CSS. And if I don't know something, I'll just, Google it. Like, I'm much more comfortable with stuff now. So it's interesting how our perception of what is complex and difficult changes over time, and our willingness to grapple with that also changes over time. But I say our because I'm assuming that I'm not the only person that this happens for, right? So it seems to me like inevitably the same thing is going to happen with various kinds of app development on various different technical platforms. We're already moving from writing code by hand, in an editor, to tools that allow us to create component libraries and share those and easily kind of assemble multiple components together and I can see in the work that Philip has done already a whole lot of that, yeah. And what I want is SquareSpace for app development or Wix, where I literally have a visual library of UI components, and I drag those onto a screen and assemble them. That's what I would like. So, Philip, there's the challenge. We don't have to do it tomorrow because I get that in order to have a thriving ecosystem, it's and in order to actually figure out what the requirements are for those kind of tools, it makes sense to have as the first step, let's make it easy for people who do have a relatively strong technical background, but who are new to this platform to build apps. Yeah, let's do that as the first step. So I'm wholeheartedly behind that, and I'm always going to be greedy.
Yeah. Well, it just strikes me as well as it's 𝐎𝐮 and others who are also building these core open source modules that can be either configured or effectively in the future dragged and dropped. are going to be ideal for, it's quite interesting. Yeah, ideal for what you're looking for. And what's the, like, what possibilities do you see, like, as that kind of tool set comes online? Like, how does it change things? How's Squarespace or others change web design? Like, how could this change app development?
It means that if you can imagine something, you can do it. You can have it. You can, and if you imagine something, you can make it happen. You can bring it into existence quickly and really cheaply. And if you've got access to some technical expertise, then that's a bonus. But whereas today, a small business, for example, or a business that is just starting out, so it's small by default because it's new, can have a website in a couple of hours. I mean, imagine if people could build the foundation of a new economy in a day.
So in my mind, like when you were talking last time and thinking about it now, I've got kind of like this picture of like people sitting, well, not cafes at the moment maybe, but yeah, people sitting at cafes coding some kind of app that's like productivity, or I can outsource my tasks or something like that. But I know through the work that you two guys have done at Holt and other places that you've got a whole broader perspective on what kind of apps people are trying to build and bring into the world and what they're trying to do with stuff. So can you expand my perception of what's possible and what you're seeing as possible through this kind of tooling being available?
Yes. So I'm going to give you a specific example because I think it helps to ground it a little bit. I was looking recently at Kiva, kiva.org, which I hadn't looked at for a while, like a few years. And, they started more than 10 years ago doing micro loans to pretty much exclusively women in the developing world. They now do domestic work. They do work in America and all kinds of different niches, and they've got all kinds of huge stuff going on in terms of identity infrastructure and big projects involving the UN, and they do amazing work, and I'm a fan. They've had real success, and have something like a 95% repayment rate on their loans. It's amazing. And it's still a spider, meaning it has a central head, that somebody could stick a pin in. I would love to be able to build something that is decentralized, where there is no central organizing company, where you give people tools and they can spin up circles of their own, giving circles, lending circles, and they can be at whatever scale they want. So it can be 5 people to do something really local, really community-based. It can be something much, much more ambitious for a whole country or a whole region. And I'd like to design and build that in Holochain, on Holochain. And I would like it to include some characteristics of an economy. So I would like it to include one or more currencies that create, well, that reflect and shape and create and direct flow within the different circles. And I have absolutely no idea how to even start designing it, let alone building it. And it might be that a useful first step for somebody like me could be to think about how would we teach people how to take a high level, reasonably fuzzy vision like that and start to break it down into, okay, what would a conceptual app design look like? What would a functional design look like? Because I'd be pretty happy as a first step if I could get the design concepts clear. If I could get some help to understand how my idea maps to how Holochain apps get designed and built. It feels like that's actually probably more important than being able to actually build it myself. I want some help with the architecture first.
It's interesting because the architecture's kind of going to change because you're adding complexity from a business perspective. I think in answer to your first question, where will it change? It means that the people who are building it, let's just take Holt as the fraternity is young, innovative, young business entrepreneurs. Okay, so what's it going to mean to them? And Belinda's right, whatever they imagine, they can do it. So, and the joke is that they can do it today in Microsoft. Okay, build an app in a day, just pick and pull from all the back office functionality of every Microsoft product going. So if your enterprise is Microsoft, you can do that today. Okay, just right, no code and blockchain, because it got 𝐎𝐻, it's got an API into a couple of options depending upon the nature of the blockchain you want. All right, so young business people are going to be doing this in any case, whether we like it or not. But what that means is that apart in the architecture, it means they can employ business functionality and logic, legal tools, legal instruments, as well as financial instruments, which is kind of beyond most of people who've worked in the technology world. That's their world. But it means they can bring their world, mainstream, complex world of how stuff works, into Holochain very quickly. And that's going to, so it changes the nature of the architecture. So it's underpinned by technology as an enabler, but it means they can actually start creating not just simplistic systems like blockchain does today. They're only really effectively in automation where you don't need people and it's in isolation, like a supply chain or something like that. They can't really do anything that sophisticated, but Holochain will allow that to occur and coexist with distributed and non-distributed. So it means that they can build something like that and test not the technology, but test the hypothesis that it would work.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's where, and if you then add in what happened with, let's keep on with Microsoft. Okay, I enjoyed this because I remember my first computer was IBM DOS, not Microsoft. So it was a big thing when so I've been watching Microsoft over the years, and I've been very critical of Microsoft. So this is unusual, but now they've acquired the latest AI from OpenAI of GPT-3. So they've just got the exclusive license. So apart from what GPT can do, which is an awful lot, if you add that into the equation as part, you can get them to build an app on the fly. So you can describe to them. And so there's a demo of them doing that, building in React, creating an app in real time from just you having a conversation with it. Okay. Knocking up a proof of concept and function in whatever function you want. So it then can use the existing capacity of building an app in a day and let them do that. But of course, and they can generate good ideas, business ideas, and they're referencing every bit of data they exist on the internet to determine the parameters of a good idea. So what I'm saying to my students is, can you compete with that? How much you know in terms of what their rate per hour is and yours today, next year, and what's that going to be able to do in 4 years' time? And of course, it pushes my students into the realm of having to be more human, because that's the only thing that's going to differentiate them from, machine learning shit. I mean, and those their strength is they rationalize things beautifully. But the problem is if you're doing something stupid today, you'll be able to do stupid things faster and cheaper tomorrow, like kill the planet as a consequence of trading. It's just like, oh, yippee. Unless you tell this person that that's not to happen, but equally there'll be people telling people it's cool to happen. So it'll have a long thing. But what we'll do is it will get an S curve, as we've seen from day one, whether that was DOS when I first started in the 1980s. We had to hard code in C, anti-aliasing and animation. That's coding. All right. Take you 5 programmers to put a slideshow together in hard code in C before anything else came. Then it was desktop publishing, then it was CD-ROMs, and then finally the 𝐻𝐶 editor that Belinda was talking about. But but in every case, all the way through history and multimedia, it causes, as we all see, this S-curve adoption, and then people creating crap fast. And then it'll come back down to where people realize they actually need a group of people, a much broader group of people with broader skills to put something together that will work. It'd be beautiful, which is where, back to collaboration.
Okay, so what I've got is a few layers. I've got especially as you're moving into the paradigm of distributed, getting the architectural support to be able to take the concept and do whatever inversions are necessary to ensure that that will work in a distributed way. Belinda, as you're describing with Kiva, it's like, okay, this thing's awesome, but it's still a pointy triangle at the top, which has all its human, organizational, and social weaknesses, no matter how much we try, are already embedded into those kind of structures. Then there's the tooling that's for developers to come on board, and then the tooling that these developers can build to make it really easy for change makers, entrepreneurs, etc. And in a few different areas, Stephen, so what I was picking up is finance, legal, business/organizational, and then I was going to add social and communications, composable pieces in all of those dimensions, and probably many more important ones that we haven't mentioned. Composable pieces allow you to build not just an app, but also an operating infrastructure for and then name the size of the ecosystem that you're trying to build. Could be for my house, for myself, for my community, for my region, for my state, whatever. And that's what we're looking for.
And so if you might go back to Belinda's Wix.
Yep.
One of the widgets in this scenario may well be, well, bring me an agreement which works for this tribal group with these cultural or value system that functions, that's proven to work by virtue of creating sufficient trust.
Yep.
As a currency where it works. So bring that one down and put that in. And then so look at interrelationships, bring me what I'm calling, it's not so much legal instrument, but it's what I would call governance, because it will be top down but also tribal. And then the financial ones and all those different types of instruments which are there for a palette, for a creator to create something let's say like a DAO on steroids, because you know, they're not easy things to think about or construct. And then of course, to get it right first time would be pretty impossible, but it means you've got ways in which you can then learn as you go and biofeed that back in. So then the analytics of what's worked before becomes really important. The value that it's generated. So at the end of the day, you want to know, was it worth it? You know, would this, if my good idea, would it be worth it? And and assume that you'll have 10 of those AI guys working, you know, people working for you. Why not have them work for you and get them running around buzzing, but understanding the point of difference between what they can do and what human beings can do.
Yep. All right. Well,
it's Belinda's thing. The first one is Belinda's on it. Listen, if you could, if you look, well, where is all that pent up, you know, just fabulous stuff? It is in that diversity. It's in those young females that I had the pleasure of talking with in some of those, in my students, but also in some of those events. I mean, they're the passion and the desire, but the barriers to be able to realize that we are part of the problem at the moment. We're not the solution. We're part of the problem because we actually create. We're almost giving contrast to that problem, which is the cost and the complexity, and having to explain to someone who may not understand that complexity, and asking them to interpret the solution for that, and the chance of getting that right are negligible. So we have to be able to serve them, serve their purpose, like I do as a teacher. It's not that I tell them what they should be doing, and I don't want to serve them, but their purpose, if it warrants it, you serve that, and then that's how we work together.
Anything to add, Belinda?
Yeah, which is the first cab off the rank, Belinda?
The first cab, what do you mean?
Your one. If you had all of this, if you could deliver all of this, wonderful. Go on, guys. What would you do?
I can't give you a soundbite about it, but it would be something that helps people get organized.
It sounds like a soundbite to me. Something that will help get people organized. And if it's true that everything that we're saying to others is just what we're saying to ourselves, how would you like to get organized?
What I mean is something that would help people get organized together. So when somebody has an intention, whether it's running for political office or, you know, organizing a cake sale at your local kindy, right? Whatever it is, there's an intention, a shared purpose, and a need to mobilize a group of people focused on that intention and shared purpose, and tools that help people, deal with the issues that bring, or efforts to organize like that, unstuck. Like, who's going to do, what do we agree to do? What do we agree not to do? How do we know we can trust each other? How do we compensate or reward people for their participation? How do we agree to do that? And I'm not talking about money necessarily. And how do we know when we've been successful, and how do we keep track of that and then talk about it to others?
You're reminding me of I closed the laptop last night and my wife was like laughing, and I was wondering like, what's going on. And there'd been a whole saga during the day because at the learning community that had cake for someone's birthday, but on the form for the community, when they asked about diet, my wife said no cow's milk for our 4-year-old because we don't have cow's milk at home. But the facilitators took that to be he's dairy intolerant. So, so then this whole cake fiasco, in the end, he got these dairy-free chocolate buttons because he said that he had a tummy ache if he ate the cake. She's like, tummy ache? And I thought it was such a beautiful and simple miss of a form asking for like allergies and her wanting to state preferences. And just in that miss came this whole like chasm of cake, which has ended up in her calling the cake creator and them agreeing to swap a piece of cake. So a huge amount of coordination has gone into this cake drama. So yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Just these little things just to coordinate cake at a, community for 15 kids, as you were saying, has a massive amount of complexity in it and all sorts of opportunities for things to go right and wrong. The whole beauty of human existence wrapped in within it. So, okay, so you like to build some tooling for like basically scalable coordination.
Yeah, I think we should call it digital mustering, being that Belinda's from Belinda's Outback. About mustering.
Digital
Anyone
mustering.
who can muster from the Outback can definitely coordinate.
Yeah, got you. Digital mustering. All right. Okay, so we're going to need some architecture for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the job. So I've got to I'll muster Russell up. What do I do when I'm bringing someone into the mustering process? We got to keep
the whole naming convention around Outback now. And you've lived Outback, so come on.
Oh no, I just don't know what I do when I bring someone new in. What's that called in the Outback?
Well, it depends how you bring him, on the end of a rope or whether you're just going to lead them or push them.
I'm not sure that mastering actually is the best.
No.
We've lost.
Because there's a really serious power, dynamic that is very unbalanced in mastering.
Sorry, I'll stop jesting. It's a very subtle thing. It's like one of those Tai Chi moves of intentionally doing it without intention. It has to be that subtle. So yes, mustering's a no-no. But but in terms of pulling it together, you need an ontology. I suspect that's the way. When all the thinking we've done is like, you need an ontology. What's one of those? Yep. Well, it's something which actually has those key ingredients in it, all those sort of understandings, because they don't exist inside of single human beings today. They're different people. Yep. So you need those different elements, and then you can sort of pull something together, I suspect.
Okay, well, I'll find an architect for a couple of weeks, and then we can go in. And so maybe our intention before Christmas is we find an architect and we get a sense of what those composable pieces would be. And that's going to be as far as we can get to for now. And then we'll have Phil come and just showing him building his developer tooling. And then over the course of the next 12 months, we'll see how these different pieces fit together, and the architecture becomes clearer and cleaner, and the composable pieces and their need becomes clearer at the same time as the dev tooling morphs into these composable modules being built at increasingly rapid rates, and see how they come together.
Yeah, and I think if we can give Phil some visual into it, because
won't be Phil. I'm going to find a different architect.
No, quite. But what I'm saying is that we allow Phil some sort of transparency into what we're doing, because what we'll be doing is sort of going ahead of the game and giving him some insight into market expectations as well.
Yep.
And what that's going to, how far, because if you look at the direction it's taking, that's where he's going to end up in any case. But we should be able to show him where the potholes are.
Yep.
And where things really work.
Yep. Yep.
Just by showing him our bruises and scars.
Given you were writing about where the internet is going in, was it 1994?
Early 2000, yeah, 90s, 95.
You published that big thing. So okay, so like this time you're just dragging Holochain into the future.
Now I've been waiting Holochain to actually become I specified 20 years ago that you needed something that would enable you to put these other disciplines into the DNA of the internet. These other, not just technical protocols and standards, but these other instruments. And I predicted that as soon as you could do that on scale, we would create for the first time in human history the ability to organize. And I use the word aggregate our economic, social, and political power, but Belinda's much better explanation of that. And that's the first time in history we've ever been able to do it, and that power would equal that of corporate and government, and so there needn't be blood. We could actually. So my mantra to students is: don't get mad, get even. If you get even in power, you can then actually affect the culture of those. You don't have to necessarily destroy them or get rid of them, because some of them are useful, but you can actually, because you'll be controlling. You only have to control 30% of their supply through these aggregated demand, and you can tell them how to behave. Gently, firmly.
Which changes who they are and what they are.
Which is where, as human beings, they'd like to be, as opposed to slave, that sort of economic slavery in something that has got this dull life form of a corporate that's sort of just eating stuff up. And I mean, I've worked with people like this, that, advised people like Charlie Bell, who ran McDonald's. And so I had the opportunity to ask him all of those questions. Why? Why? And they're just as trapped as individuals. I know it's easy to condemn them, but actually that's not the answer. And this is the answer.
Okay, amazing. Guys, anything else to add?
So will you help me work on a scenario that we can talk through with an architect?
Yes, please.
All right.
I'll be the dish maker.
Was it worth it?
That's the equation. You need to be able to work out, will it be worth it? If for everybody who's in terms of all of this, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
That's all the value stuff does.
I know. Well, are you going to work on that as you go through the scenario? Because we only want to work on a scenario that will be worth it.
I can't do it any other way.
Okay. Okay. As long as it works.
Yeah. Based on their criteria, not on yours, though, but it has to be on their
criteria. Exactly. Okay, super. Well, this is going to be fun, guys. Do you want the architect to be a surprise, or would you like to know in advance?
I don't mind.
Okay.
Fine.
It doesn't matter.
Probably an interesting test if it's a surprise.
Yep. Okay. Let's see how we go. All right. Fabulous.
Great. Thanks, David.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. I know. All right. Thanks, everyone. Well.